So this is a critique of me teaching Winslow's to flex laterally in the halter on the ground. So I'm just gonna kind of stand here by his shoulder and then use the lead rope to kind of just take out the slack and ask him to flex that way. That was actually pretty good. Um, I am not worried about him bringing his nose over super far. I like that I'm releasing pretty quickly. Some people really want to pull their head around, and this is actually one of the videos I don't mind too much. Some of the things that I did at the time were not great. This one's not too bad at all because I'm being very gentle and light here and then just kind of holding it. And I definitely could have released a little bit earlier on that one, but that was not bad. Now I do tend to teach it with just a target, and then I'll do like a rain cue, and then I present the target and they touch the target. But this is not bad. Um, Really, at this point, I think what I'm trying to do is ask him to flex more because he was so great those first few tries. I was asking for a little bit more. The one thing that I would change about that is I really only need about that much flexion. You don't need a ton. Like that is more than plenty. And then he's like, "Okay, well, I'm giving you the right answer and you're not letting go yet." So he starts moving his feet. So that's a pretty common thing that happens when you're teaching the lateral reflection. And I'm just moving him over so that the camera can see. That's not part of the exercise or anything. But really, like when you're riding, you only need a little bit of flexion. Like to steer, even like at the time, I was like not bending to a stop, but just like doing a one rein stop. So I did a lot of that, which I don't recommend doing. But I would just pull his head all the way around to like get him to stop is like kind of a safety thing, which really it can be really dangerous because your horse can fall over and stuff. Um, but really all you need is just a little bit of flexion so that they can bend around in a smaller circle and kind of wind themselves down to a stop. This is why you only need a little of flexion. So, but he's doing really well. Like honestly, like if I had him now and he flexing like that well, like I'm done. That's all I need, you know. Um, and if you're doing the groundwork well and you're not pulling and you're sequencing your cues well, that is going to start building up to this lateral flexion because I'm picking up on my lead rope and I'm asking him to lunge like to the right, and he's going to follow that pressure of the lead rope and he's going to go that direction, and that's going to build up on this lesson. So really this is plenty. Like he really doesn't need to do more. See, I'm asking for a little too much, and then he starts moving his feet. And then again, with the negative reinforcement, you got to wait until the feet stop and then you let go. And then I'm just, again, moving him so that the camera can see. Again, a lick and chew after the pressure is released. That's important to know. Really soft here. Yeah, I mean, I would just probably stop the lesson because let's do the other side and be done because that was plenty. That was another thing that I did a lot in the past was, and I probably do now, but hopefully I'm getting better at it. But it's drill and drill and drill and drill. That is a big thing. That's a problem, especially with just traditional horsemanship, a lot of natural horsemanship stuff, because it's like, okay, well, we have these like usually it's like do this, do this, do this, do this. There's different steps and you get stuck in one and then your horse gets really sour. So like you're like, well, I want it to be 100% before we move on to the next step. But then in doing that, your horse hates it and you'll never be 100%. And then you'll get stuck there forever and your horse gets more sour and you get more frustrated. And then usually they don't connect to the riding at all. A lot of them don't. Like you don't need a horse to back up on the ground in response to a rope wiggle to ride well. That's just not a thing. I do recommend teaching the lateral flexion because you do want to bend your horse to a stop. That is something you are going to need under saddle, but a lot of it is not. So that's an important thing is I still kind of struggle with is, okay, this is good enough. It's functional. It doesn't need to be 100%, and then I can move on to something else so the horses don't get sour, they don't get bored, and you don't get frustrated, and they don't get frustrated. So yeah, at this point, like he's good. This is plenty. This is more than plenty. He doesn't need to be flexed that much. That's too much flexion at this point. And again, I was in a completely different mindset at that time. I'm like, oh yeah, he needs to flex all the way around, all that stuff. I'm pretty happy with how I trained this. Or I mean, he probably had, he knows how to flex his neck, but how soft I was compared to teaching the other stuff. But I didn't need quite this much flexion, but really like the timing was a lot better. I was a lot softer. So out of all the exercises, I'm happiest with this one. He just doesn't need quite that much flexion. That's way too much. Where his nose is past his shoulder, he doesn't need that. No horse needs that. You could do like a carrot stretch. Like that's the only time I would ever really ask that, or he's doing some body work, something like that. But he just really doesn't need it, and I'm just doing way too much. Like he probably only needed the first like minute or two, like half as much. So that's another thing that we need to work on.